Friends, welcome back. Let me ask you something right from the start. What happens when a so-called superpower, the United States, tries to bully one of its closest allies, and that ally fights back? What happens when America, the land that claims to stand for freedom in business, treats skilled foreign workers like dangerous criminals? And what happens when South Korea, yes, South Korea, forces Washington to swallow its pride and backtrack? Today, you're going to hear a story that sounds almost unbelievable. A story about Donald Trump, federal agents in handcuffs, a raid on Hyundai and LG's billion-dollar factory, and how South Korea taught America a lesson it won't forget anytime soon. Stick with me, because this isn't just about factories and visas. It's about pride, power, and the fragile balance in global politics. Hello, dear friends. I greet you all with respect and love. I hope you're well, I hope you're safe, and I thank you for joining me once again. We are together, one-on-one, in another program. Last week, we talked about the shocking raid in the United States on the joint Hyundai-LG factory. Trump's police stormed the place like they were hunting down dangerous fugitives. 475 workers were rounded up. Out of them, 317 were South Koreans. That's not just a number. That's hundreds of engineers, technicians, skilled trainers, humiliated and dragged away in handcuffs. South Korea exploded in anger. Seoul demanded answers, demanded respect, and made it clear, this will not stand. The pressure was so intense that even Donald Trump, who rarely admits defeat, was forced to backtrack, to soften his words, and to effectively apologize. Imagine that. South Korea didn't mince words. They said directly, if you don't fix your visa system, if you don't treat our people with respect, you won't get our investments. South Korean President Lee Moo-young went on record last Thursday. Unless Washington makes it easier for Korean workers to get visas, unless the harassment stops, Korean companies will think twice before building new factories in America. Now let's pause here. Anyone familiar with Korean political culture knows this is not normal. Koreans don't usually make blunt threats like this to their allies. For Seoul to speak in such strong, almost confrontational terms, it shows just how serious they were. Let's rewind to that infamous raid. Federal agents stormed Hyundai and LG's joint facility. 316 Koreans were arrested, along with technicians, engineers, master trainers, people sent there not as permanent employees, but to install equipment, set up production lines, and train American workers. These were not illegal immigrants. These were not unskilled laborers sneaking across borders. They were specialists, people America needed to get the factory up and running. But Trump and his team painted them as bad people, criminals, illegal workers. South Korea refused to accept this humiliation. They sent a government jet, picked up their citizens from American custody, and flew them back to Seoul in a dramatic show of national pride. President Lee said outright, this raid shocked every Korean investor who had ever put money into America. Here's the heart of the problem: America's visa system. Business leaders in Korea, and in fact from many countries, have complained for years that the U.S. makes it ridiculously hard to bring in short-term technicians for projects. Unlike Europe or parts of Asia, the U.S. doesn't have flexible visas for workers who come just for a few weeks or months to install machinery. So what do companies do? They try to use loopholes. They send trainers on tourist visas. They rotate staff quickly. But Trump's America decided to crack down, and instead of negotiating, they sent in the police. The result? A disaster. Foreign investors are now terrified that any day their people could be dragged out in chains. And who wants to pour billions into a country that treats your engineers like criminals? Let's talk numbers. Back in July, during tough customs negotiations, Trump demanded that South Korea commit at least $350 billion in direct investment in the U.S. In return, Washington would lower tariffs on Korean goods from 25% to 15%. Seoul reluctantly agreed. But they had one condition: make it easier for our workers to do their jobs. Now, after the raid, that entire deal is in jeopardy. Hyundai's CEO, Jose Munoz, has already said that the Georgia plant raid will delay operations by at least 2 to 3 months, maybe more. Imagine the costs. An $8 billion project, delayed because federal agents wanted a show of force. We've often compared Trump to a bull in a china shop, and here the metaphor fits perfectly. Picture it. Hundreds of federal agents swarming into an auto factory, dragging away engineers in handcuffs. This wasn't law enforcement, it was theater. A reckless display that froze production lines, scared away workers, and damaged America's reputation as a place for foreign investment. As President Lee pointed out, this also highlighted the double standards. Americans can go to Korea on tourist visas, teach English, make money, live comfortably, and Koreans don't make a fuss. But in America, Koreans get chained up like criminals for a paperwork issue. And let's not forget the human story. These were highly trained specialists, flown across the world to build a factory. They weren't trying to stay in America. They weren't competing with US workers. They were there temporarily, to train, to teach, and then to go home. After the raid, Trump finally gave in. He instructed Homeland Security, let them finish the factory, give them the necessary permits. But by then, the damage was done. Out of hundreds of Koreans, only one agreed to stay in America. The rest said no. They packed their bags and flew back to Seoul on that government jet. Think about that. Trump begged them to stay, and they refused. That's how deep the humiliation was. The fallout was immediate. South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Hu-yun confronted U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio directly. She described how Korean workers were dragged on the ground, cuffed, chained, like dangerous felons. She said the Korean people were shocked, outraged, humiliated. Rubio had no choice but to listen. He promised that this would not happen again. And even though the State Department spokesperson downplayed the meeting, it's clear, America caved. Trump caved. Trump tried to spin it. He claimed America welcomes foreign workers, that he never wanted to scare away investments, that the raid was just a misunderstanding. He even tweeted to reassure Korean investors, "We welcome your workers, we want them to teach us, and we'll do better in the future." But let's be honest, this was damage control. Trump saw the risk of losing hundreds of billions in Korean investment, and he had no choice. Pride gave way to money. So what do we learn here? First, that even America is not untouchable. When a smaller nation stands tall, defends its people, and leverages its economic power, even Washington has to retreat. Second, this shows us how fragile America's manufacturing revival really is. Without foreign expertise, without Korean, Japanese, Taiwanese engineers, the U.S. can't even complete its factories. Trump himself admitted it. America has to relearn how to build chips, trains, ships, semiconductors. And for now, they need foreigners to teach them. And third, it's a lesson in dignity. South Korea refused to let its citizens be treated like criminals. They demanded respect, and they got it. Friends, this story isn't just about a raid on a factory. It's about global power. It's about pride. It's about how a so-called superpower can be forced to bow its head when confronted with firm resistance. Donald Trump wanted to show strength. Instead, he showed weakness. He wanted to intimidate. Instead, he humiliated himself. And South Korea proved that even in today's world, the dignity of a nation can force America to back down. So what do you think? Was this a turning point in U.S.-Korea relations? Is America losing its grip as the world's magnet for investment? And will other countries now dare to stand up to Washington the same way? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. If you found this analysis useful, if you enjoy getting the real story behind the headlines, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay informed, and remember, dignity matters more than power. See you soon.